Just on Saturday, February 6, 2021, for MarketChess.com. On the Saturday evening, we will take a look at the Super Bowl tomorrow from a betting perspective, give you some ideas as far as the wagering. We talked about this last Saturday, this idea that over the last 13 Super Bowls, you can see the graph, it's courtesy of covers.com. We'll look at their site a bit more in a bit, but pretty useful site. Over the last 13 Super Bowls, the first move, so right after the AFC and NFC championship games conclude 2 weeks ago on that Sunday evening, you'll get an immediate opening spread in the Las Vegas sportsbook and the online sportsbooks now across the country as it becomes more and more legalized sports betting. At that point, the opening spread in this particular game was Chiefs minus 3.5. Immediately, some well respected bettors came in, enough to the point where several sports books moved the line down a half point in favor of Tampa, which means the line went from Chiefs minus 3.5 down to Chiefs minus 3, and the line is still at minus 3. So the opening move, and I know it seems like a rinky dink half point, who cares? Well, when it's a reasonably tight spread, less than a touchdown, especially like this, it does matter. And moreover, why it matters so much is the last 13 Super Bowls, I believe 10 out of them, as you can see here, the first move was the right move, whichever way it went spread. Now, it didn't mean that it doesn't mean that Tampa needs to win the game outright. There are many scenarios, we'll talk about this, where Tampa can lose a 1 or 2 point game. Many scenarios, in my view. Last year, for example, the Kansas City Chiefs, and I bet them last year, were down 20-10 in the fourth quarter against a very tough San Francisco 49ers team. The Chiefs, with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback, rallied at really what seemed like at just the last minute. They were flat the whole game, and they won the game actually kind of going away. They ended up winning, I think, 31-20. So they just kind of went bonkers there in the last half of the fourth quarter. So they're a big time comeback team. In most of these playoff games, even 2 weeks ago against Buffalo, they found themselves down. Last year, they found themselves down a lot in the playoffs, including the Super Bowl, obviously. So they're an excellent comeback team, but they're banged up this year. They're missing, I think, 3 of the 5 offensive linemen that normally start for them from last year's team. Both tackles, they're shuffling guys around, or out. They're shuffling guys around either way. And moreover, Patrick Mahomes, we know 3 weeks ago, he got a concussion, which knocked him out of the game against Cleveland. He looked obviously very good 2 weeks ago against Buffalo, but he is trying to get over turf toe, which can be kind of a nagging injury. So what that means is the Chiefs are magnificent. They have wonderful players. Tyreek Hill is all world. If you're not much of a football fan, you want to tune in to see him. He's one of the fastest, most electric players you're going to see. Travis Kelce is an all world tight end. I love some of the guys they have on defense. Tyrone Matthew, the Honey Badger, is an excellent defensive back. Really a great player in general. Pretty good defensive player. Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, was the defensive coordinator when the Giants beat Tom Brady and the Patriots twice. So he's seasoned. He knows what he's doing. But again, this Tampa defense now that Patrick Mahomes is going to face tomorrow with a banged up offensive line is very good up front. Their pass rush is fantastic, and they're peaking at the right time. Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaq Barrett, Sue in the middle, Vita Vea, Devin White is a linebacker. They're really, really good. And I think, Antoine Winfield Jr. should be back. He's been banged up. He's an excellent young player in the secondary. It's a good matchup, is my point. But the bottom line from a betting perspective was the opening spread was 3.5. Okay, and it moved to 3 in favor of Tampa. So that means taking the points with Tampa seems to be the right play if you believe this chart here. Again, the last 10, it wasn't perfect, obviously. The Broncos-Panthers Super Bowl was interesting. About 5-6 years ago. That day, Panthers had a wonderful regular season, crushing through the playoffs, and all of a sudden they ran into just really just a freight train of a defense from the Broncos. So you can always have outliers. The Saints with that special Super Bowl over the Colts, that was a great win. So, there are always exceptions. And then we had a draw, Patriots Seahawks with that wild. Seahawks had the game won, and obviously they throw an interception to goal line, and it winds up being Patriots win by 1 point for a push on the bet against the spread. Again, anything can happen, but most of the time, the first move is the right move. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs even win the game by 1 or 2 points. But again, if you believe this, that history is our guide here, and that the initial the sharp money saw too much value in Tampa, then I think Tampa is the right play, +3. And you're betting on a close game. As far as, and here's the Covers website, the over/under. Patrick Everson does a really good job with this. It moved from an opening, I think it was 57, it was 56.5, now it's 56. So it's moving down, but the public money, he interviews all these directors of the sports books in Las Vegas and the online books. And as usual, the public loves the over in big games. And you can see why, right? Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, let's get a lot of points. As you can see here, Chuck Esposito, the station sportsbook director, said the best case scenario for the sports book. So again, obviously they're on the other side. They're the market makers, right? They're on the other side of the public money, the betting money, I should say. They want Chiefs to win by 1 or 2, so that means the Chiefs don't cover the spread, even if they win the game outright, and the under. So the sports books are betting on the under, right? And basically that's what they're saying. And they move. If they were really nervous about the game being a high-scoring affair, why would they move their own market here in favor of the under from 57 to 56? Why not jack it up to 60, right? If you're worried about a high-scoring game, make the bettors pay up for a higher total. Think about that, right? So the market's moving in a different way. So that, to me, indicates they're comfortable with the idea of a lower scoring game, which doesn't go over the total of 56 points now, which is fascinating to me. I mean, think about it. Why is that? Why would they be comfortable? Well, 2 points. One, again, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are an electric offense, but they're banged up on the offensive line. They're facing a really tough pass rush and a good defense in Tampa. And the Kansas City defense themselves, when they're on defense, they're pretty good as well. They've been pretty solid. The second thing is the Super Bowl itself, folks, is a much different game than any NFL game you're going to see. Why? The long commercial breaks, right? A lot of them are publicly traded stocks. They'll be presenting plenty of fun commercials tomorrow, memorable commercials. Long commercial breaks, really extended halftime for the halftime show. It breaks up the momentum of the offense. It allows the defense to make adjustments. It allows the defense to catch their wind, right? The defense may not be wearing down so quickly in these sorts of games. They can, get hydrated. They can regroup. They can catch their breath. That tends to actually favor the defense. Now, again, it doesn't always work out that way. The Eagles Patriots Super Bowl a couple years ago with Nick Foles out shooting Tom Brady was a high scoring affair. But last year the game went under. Right, the year before the game went way under, the Patriots Rams. Right, these games, the Giants Patriots years ago, they always went under. These games, these Super Bowl games, tend to typically go under. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. One more thing, which may seem two more things, which may seem a bit goofy to talk about, but I have to mention it. One, the home field advantage. The game's being played in Tampa. Tampa has technically a home field advantage, the first ever team to ever host a Super Bowl. They get to, especially with the COVID protocols, they basically just get to sleep in their beds and drive to the stadium like it's just another game. All of the media stuff pretty much has been virtual this week. The Chiefs elected to stay in Kansas City and practice there, and they're flying in tonight, I believe. So for them, they're kind of dipping in, dipping out. But I think there is something to be said for in the Super Bowl for hosting it. You get to sleep in your own bed, drive in your own car to the game, and you're familiar, obviously, with the stadium. I think that's worth about a half point. Normally, they say home field advantage in football is worth 3 points, but I think that's too much. about a half point. The second thing is, if you're old enough to remember, like me, 18 years ago, Tampa won a Super Bowl against the Oakland Raiders. Oakland was pretty favored in that game. They had the Rich Gannon, the quarterback. I think they had Jerry Rice on the team. They were kind of flying through the playoffs. They looked really hot, and it was pretty. The Raiders were favored by 4 points, and it was pretty. I would say unanimous. There was a nice consensus among people who pick games, sports talk radio show hosts and pundits, that the Raiders were just going to dominate. They looked so crisp. They looked so good throughout the regular season and the postseason. And I think Tampa came out and blew them out 48-21. The game was over basically by halftime. Honestly, it was just a runaway sort of game. It was really surprising to many people. I think there's a little bit of West Coast bias. Not West Coast. You talk about that with West Coast, like in college football, with like USC and some of these West Coast teams. They're always complaining about West Coast bias. I think there's a West Coast of Florida bias in this Super Bowl. I think, if the Miami Dolphins were in the Super Bowl, I think people would be more apt to pick them. But Tampa, even with Tom Brady, his first year there, obviously, Tampa is just not an elite organization in sports. They won that Super Bowl, 18 years ago, but they've been very quiet ever since. They haven't done anything for the most part. And I think, again, there is this idea out there. I think that's working against them, where we saw it throughout the playoffs this year. Tampa was a 3-point underdog at the Saints, a 3-point underdog at the Packers. And I think, again, we're seeing this theme here, a 3-point underdog where people know Tom Brady comes up big. He's a champion, he's a winner. Tampa has a really good team, frankly, a lot of talent top to bottom, an experienced, seasoned coach. And I think there's still this idea that, like, wow, is Tampa really going to win the Super Bowl? Again, I'm not going to bet the money line or bet outright, but I do think Tom Brady getting 3 points when the line has moved in his favors, it makes sense. And I do like the under as a bet if you're looking to pick the total here. So Tampa +3 and the under. Wanted to give you a full analysis there. The pass rush of the Tampa defensive line. I don't think they're going to have to blitz much. I know defensive coordinator Todd Bowles like to mix it up and bring some heat, but against that banged up patchwork, that's what it is. Kansas City offensive line will absolutely be the key to the game. And again, if Mahomes comes out, if the Chiefs come out sluggishly and they fall behind, I know they've always been able to catch up. I don't know that they're quite going to be able to afford to do that in this Super Bowl. So I think it would be a fascinating game from the get-go. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the analysis. Enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy the big game.